but give them the skills to make it feel really unique for each customer that they're dealing with, because that's one of the great ways to really drive long-term customer commitment, is to, again, make people feel that you've really understood them, got under their skin, and are working with their best interests at heart. That's what makes a really powerful salesperson, if they can do that naturally and genuinely.
Hello and welcome to the InGear Media Podcast. I'm here today with Tim English. I've been trying for quite some time now to get Tim on video in some kind of format. He's made me wait, but we're finally here, so I've had to offer to interview him, but we're here now. So Tim, if I could just start by getting you to maybe tell us a bit about yourself and GBB Coaching Consultancy, and I guess we'll go from there.
Yeah, of course. It's great to be here. Yeah, you have been chasing me down for a little while. It's taken to put me into isolation with no one else to talk to, that I'm prepared to get on camera and chat with you. My name is Tim English. I am the founder and now managing director of GBB Coaching and Consultancy. So we've been running for over 11 years now. We're actually into our 12th year. And we are a full service learning and development agency. We do everything from fully integrated partner solutions, where we really act as a large corporate's learning and development department. We handle all their inquiries and their LMS systems, down to standalone learning and development programs that we plug into all sorts of businesses across a number of industries, SMEs to large corporates, to one-to-one coaching for people. So we've really developed a very broad range of products and quite a large team now. So 9 of us permanently employed in the business, and over 65 associates on our books, out delivering programs in lots of different formats.
Cool. And I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with you for a little while now, both as InGear Media, but also as one of those associates. So, I mean, I know the quality of the business, but if you had to kind of pinpoint down, what would you say is it that makes GBB Coaching Consultancy unique in its industry and how you do it?
Yeah, it's interesting, that question, isn't it? I think, when we do sales training, of course, we talk about USPs, unique selling points, and what's different. And then I think when you try and hold that mirror up and say what is truly different, there's very few businesses and products that can truly say we're the only people doing this. And I think actually in many ways that's the beauty of the environment that we operate in now commercially in all businesses, is that there's an awful lot of competition and there's always somebody out there with something similar. So you really have to look at the small things that make you different. But I would say for us, it's about blending tried and tested theories and models that genuinely help people. We haven't written our own theories. We haven't tried to create our own templates for people to work to. We've really looked at good, solid business advice out there from some great authors, people who are doing some really detailed research, which is not what we're about. We're not an academic agency. We don't have an academic background. We're really on the practical, pragmatic end of looking at that, finding the best research that's out there, and saying, well, how can we use that to help people here and now? How can we quickly get that to their desk and get them doing something different? So we're definitely focused around behavior change, but about application more than anything. And I think that's what makes us different, is that when people work with us, yes, we do some upfront work with people either in the classroom or in a virtual environment to get them that new way of working. But then all of our programs are really focused on what do they go away and do with it, and how do we support them to do something different with it, and matching the right coach or associate for that team, that company's culture. And that's where we, I suppose, get that uniqueness from our clients' perspective, that they say, well, we want to work with you again because you really get us now and you've really got under the skin of the business. And actually, if we work with somebody else, we're going to go right back to scratch and try and build that relationship. So actually, our uniqueness is the fact that we become really well known within our clients and their partner businesses.
Cool. And so just to give people a bit of an idea then, what's the process usually like? So you talk about kind of that end goal and working back from it a little bit. How does the process go? If somebody comes to you, what sort of problems do they solve and how do you do it?
Well, we always have to start, and I think, from a business advice point of view, it's something that somebody said to me a long time ago, and I've always held dear. it's all very well as an agency, especially a very adaptable, flexible agency like we would think of ourselves as, to say, well, we can have a go at anything. What project have you got? We love a new challenge. But it's not a very convincing business argument to go around knocking on doors saying we can do a bit of everything. So it's finding that right pitch for people, as you say. What do you need help with, and why would we be the right people to help you? So the question that we normally ask is around behavior. That's what we really specialize in, is affecting behavior change for people. So what do you need your people to be doing different 12 weeks after they finish this piece of training?
So when we talk about behavior,
yeah.
just if we assume somebody watching doesn't necessarily know what types of behavior changes you might be working with, what if we just go a tiny bit deeper, what types of behavior change do you typically work with? So I mean, I know leadership, for example, is one of the programs, but I'm sure there's many more.
For sure. And we think of behavior in a number of different levels and categories, and there are some behaviors that are relatively easy to change. If you give somebody the right stimulus to imagine what life could be different if they made a small change, it's not that hard to get them to do it. They see the benefits of it, and they go away and they start that new way of working. And there's other stuff which is more values based, and the behavior is coming from a value which could be very difficult to change for somebody, and it may not be a negative behavior. We're very strong on saying there are no good or bad behaviors. No, you can behave badly, but no behavior set is bad if that's what makes you who you are, and that's what you've learned gets you where you need to be. But if it doesn't fit with the culture of the business that you're working within, if it doesn't fit with the value set of your customers, whether they're internal or external customers, it will not be helpful, and it will be holding you back, not driving you forward in whatever job you're doing. So we do try to split out the kind of attitudinal stuff that we work with businesses on. Well, actually, how can we recruit and promote those sorts of attitudes, because they will be difficult to change in the people that we've got. Not impossible, but certainly much more challenging. And what are the behaviors which are much more about the way we do things around here, and the way we apply ourselves, and the way we use certain processes, and those behaviors can be changed. So yes, we would be looking at leadership behaviors, we would be looking at customer service behaviors, we would definitely be looking at process-based sales behaviors. How can we get people to consistently use a sales process in a way that feels very natural to them, that becomes habitual and easy for them to replicate on a day-to-day basis, but give them the skills to make it feel really unique for each customer that they're dealing with, because that's one of the great ways to really drive long-term customer commitment, is to again make people feel that you've really understood them, got under their skin, and are working with their best interests at heart. That's what makes a really powerful salesperson, if they can do that naturally and genuinely.
Cool. And I'm sure with that experience with these clients, and like I said, some of them you've been working with for a long time, with that comes some very cool events along the way that you get to be a part of.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying it's 12 years now since you started the agency?
That's right. So, yeah. But obviously my career's been going a lot longer than that, and I suppose that's some of the things that when I think back to, what am I really proud of, what have we achieved really well. I spent 4 years with trading standards early on in my career, so I got a real understanding for the importance of compliance and process-driven work. That was within an enforcement setting, and I've said that didn't really fit my long-term ambitions.
But I started telling my Charlotte the other day about not having a micro pig and what the reasons would have been for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I worked alongside the animal health department as well, so all the animal tagging and tracking and movements. Yeah, it was very process-driven, but what it gave me was a real passion for looking at challenges that businesses have of how can we run good business from our own perspective, but be completely compliant and be doing it on a level playing field with other people, but still finding that uniqueness that we were talking about earlier, without in that situation breaking the law or falling foul of any of the legislation. So that gave me a real passion for helping people look at their business and look at their business processes. So anything we do around business process kind of excites me, and I'm very proud of from that perspective. But then I also had a big chunk of time around the events and hospitality industry. So I think I've brought a lot of that with me through into the L&D world over the years. So then when we get to build a really great, engaging physical stage set or produce a really insightful piece of video work that carries that L&D message through, but has all of that emotional quality that you get from live events, that really marries together. And then occasionally, of course, we get to go and do it in some fantastic locations as well. And you and I have done stuff together, on beaches in Ibiza. We've done stuff in zoos. We've done, we have some fantastic trips, but those things are memorable. And I meet people along the way now, as I say, 12 years into this business, but I've met people that I haven't seen for years, and they just crop up in a different client, and they are talking about events that we did right back at the start. They remember them, they remember what we talked about, and that's why we do it. It's about making all of this memorable and useful, and people able to bring it back and use it at their desk, not just 12 weeks later. That's that question we ask, but genuinely 10 years on. I have people who say, I remember being in that tent by that swimming pool, talking about this with you, watching that video, creating that piece of content that we did together. Those are the things that become habits. That's how you change behavior for people. And if that behavior change lasts 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, that's a huge win for people. Actually, if you can just get a behavior change for the next 6 to 12 months, and manage that through, you probably ought to be looking at your processes again anyway in this fast-moving environment that we've got, and refreshing those skills and refreshing the way that you deliver them for people.
I think that's really cool, and it's really true as well, because in my experience with what I've seen GBB do and you do, I think that's bang on. I've seen some of these events and worked on some of them with you, and you can see literally people go away absolutely buzzing afterwards. And from a premium brand's point of view, I'm sure, like you said, that's worth its weight in gold. To be able
if you think about how much any brand, but particularly the premium brands, will invest in their bricks and mortar retail sites, the environment that they create there, what they will spend in terms of video and web assets to create a particular feeling, to spark an emotion with their customers, to build a connection with the brand. Why would they then take their people, who have to be the physical embodiment of that brand, and make it live and breathe every day for those customers? Why would they put their brand messages into a beige training room in a cheap hotel? How cheaply can we buy this training room for the day to try and make our people really excited about our brand? It makes no sense. And yet even big brands will still do that. And when we start to talk about, okay, we've got the content, that's fine, but where are we now going to put this training? How are we going to present it? How are we going to immerse people in these particular skills and behaviors that you want? If you're going to talk about top class customer service, why are you not going to make sure that your staff are going to receive top level customer service all day today in the training venue that you're using? How can you make that venue look like it was built just for them, just for today? And that's where my events background, I think, always kicks in. What can we create for people as they walk through the door, as they enter the training room? What's on the desk? What's on the screen? What are they going to be eating at lunchtime? How is it going to be served to them? And how will we tie those messages back into the training through the rest of the day? So yeah, environment is hugely important to behaviour change.
Cool, and I think we could probably sit and talk for a far too long amount of time just on that alone. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to be mean and say, could you pick a favourite event that you've ever worked on or produced, either as as Tim English or as GBB Coaching Consultancy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think. And there was a bit of a crossover of the brands. Obviously, the nature of agency work means it doesn't always have our brand, sitting over it. And this wasn't an event that had the GBB brand on it particularly, because we were working through, some other partner agencies at the time. But it was very definitely the GBB ethos. And that was some work that we did for Castrol a long time ago, actually. And it was a global conference, and it ran out in Dubai. And whilst that was a fabulous setting, it wasn't particularly relevant to the event. But what we actually built was a time tunnel for people who really were not that connected to the brand that they were working for. They knew what was going on with the brand right now because they were very involved with it, but we needed to take them right back in time to the roots of where some of those engineering concepts had come from, where some of the passion within the customer base came from. And we built a really immersive tunnel that people had to work their way through, really discovering that brand, and until they came out into a fantastic set where we delivered the training and the functionality, and it was that really did change behaviors and attitudes, and we built some really impassioned people, and you could see it physically from the moment that they walked into the front end of the tunnel. By the time they came out of the other end of that session about 3 hours later, they left completely different and feeling different and off to do something different for that brand. So I think that's probably one of my favorites, actually.
Yeah, that does sound awesome. I've not heard about that one either before, so that's cool. And I think before I move on then, the thing that just popped into my mind is, because I know you do this, you work at that end of the spectrum, delivering these absolutely insane events. And as much as it isn't about penny pinching too much, and you want people to put things on in an engaging way, if somebody has come to speak to you with a smaller budget, perhaps, how do you tackle that end of the spectrum if it comes to putting a project together, on a smaller scale, perhaps?
Well, I suppose something that I hadn't particularly thought. It was just something that I did, and I did it fairly regularly, but obviously you do it with a new group, and they are always seeing it for the first time. But I'd done it quite a lot, so I didn't think about it very much. But then it just kept coming back as the example that people would talk to me about. And it's exactly the same thing about that level of engagement. But even if you have got a fairly standard training room and not a particularly interesting topic, making sure that people have understood the content, because it may not be, earth-shattering for them, but if it's important enough to run a training session on, you must make sure it's been delivered well, understood well, and can be recalled. So some level of assessment is very important. So in that lower end of the budget scale, not the lower end in terms of quality, but as you say, if you haven't got the budget to do something really different, you might just run a quiz at the end of a section. You might come back from lunch and say, well, let's just split into 2 teams, and I'm going to ask you 20 questions about what we were doing this morning, just to make sure that you've understood it properly. Well, I just ordered off of eBay a gold lame jacket, and I used to put it on, and play that's it, and play some quiz show music off my phone and just wear a silly gold jacket. The number of people that, again, I meet, a couple of years down the line, or I link in with them or whatever it is, and they go, oh God, I remember you in that gold jacket. And they don't remember me in the gold jacket. They remember the quiz, and they remember some of the stuff we talked about. Well, I mean, if that jacket cost me 15 quid from a fancy dress website, the value that it has given to clients whose staff remember and retain what we were doing, because that became such an engaging moment, because we just had a lot of fun with it. And I think that's the thing, fun doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And actually, if something was fun, it's probably even more engaging than if it was impressive, because you'd spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on it, building a set, building a time tunnel, flying them to Dubai, whatever it might have been. You could have just had me in a gold jacket and got an even better result. Who knew?
There you go. And I mean, even from what I've seen, how competitive a room gets all of a sudden when you get some quiz buzzers out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Okay. Well, we are doing this amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, so we will of course touch on that, because I think it's relevant for people that would watch this. But I do want to just keep COVID-19 aside for the moment, and just sort of look back, and as someone who's been in the industry for quite some time now, how have you seen the industry change in the past decade?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and there have been lots of changes, lots of trends, some fantastic new research and work published, which, as much as some of the traditional training models, still have an absolute place when you're having conversations around, motivation theory. You have to talk about Hertzberg. You have to talk about Maslow in the right way and in the right context, I still believe. But there's some amazing books and theories out there that have been written by some really talented people, and so I think from that point of view, you could look at changes in training material and say, of course, it continues to develop. But I think as an industry, probably technology has been the biggest driver of change, for better and for worse. And so probably the biggest change in a positive that I see in the last 10 years, e-learning, I think, has shifted now, rather than people going for e-learning as a cost saving, and that really was the driver behind the e-learning movement for a long time, and now, rather than people looking to e-learning to save money, we see more and more clients looking towards genuinely blended learning to add value. And it's only as we started to see that shift that as an agency, we started to really embrace it. We were not a technology-driven agency particularly. In fact, we were very successful for a long time going around clearing up after some pretty awful e-learning that had been going on. So for us, e-learning was great because we didn't do it. We fixed other people's e-learning problems. Now we've seen that genuine shift towards brilliantly blended programs that add so much value and help people's budgets go so much further. And that's a shift that we really embrace now. And I think that's the biggest change I've seen in 10 years.
Yeah, me too. It's technology is just moving so fast. Okay, well, that leads me on to the next question, and it is around technology. So there is new technology emerging. Is there anything that's caught your eye, or anything that you're really excited to see how it develops as we move forward?
Yeah, and I think, again, I'm back to that sort of events-based background that I had. There were always 100 new bits of technology coming out into the events industry. And I worked for a while for a technical events agency, so we had a warehouse full of lighting rigs, and big pieces of kit and LED panels and all the rest of it. But what I was always very concerned about, as I worked as a conference producer, so I was more the creative producer within the technical agency. And I was looking for the effect on the audience. I didn't really care how you created the effect. So if one of my team came to me and I said, this is what I want the audience to experience at this point in the conference, and they'd come to me with 3 different ways to deliver that, I wasn't really very excited by the technology for the technology's sake. What's going to be different about the audience experience? So for me, there are lots of new technologies which are being pushed into L&D, haven't probably been developed for L&D, but people are grabbing hold of them. And if you're doing something genuinely different and you are creating a different user experience, which makes it more memorable, back to our earlier points, then I'm all for it. But actually, what excites me right now is the advent of 5G and its use on personal devices. Because for the type of work that we do, that engagement back at the desk, I think as we are able to get real-time coaching support to people at their desk, on their personal advice, on the shop floor on their personal advice, to be watching what they're doing in real time and being able to coach them about the interaction that they just had with a customer, for them to be able to be about to make a phone call for somebody, be thinking about the work that they did with us during a training program, and be able to access one of our team to ask a quick question, say, look, this is what I think I'm going to say to this customer. Have I used that tool right? Have I phrased it in the right way? And us to be able to have that instant interaction with them, and then be able to say, well, let me listen into that call with you, or give me a call back when you've made that call. That's going to make a huge difference to what we do, to be able to change those behaviors back in the workplace. So I'm really excited to see where that takes us in the next few years, because I think that will be a game changer for how we get to the people that we're trying to help.
Yeah, that's an angle I hadn't thought of, but that actually sounds really, really cool. And it makes perfect sense, because you have your Amazons of the world and Netflixes and so on. And the reason they've won is it is just convenient and quick.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's always on.
Let's be honest, we were talking about the fact that we're filming this during the COVID-19 lockdown, and we're all, thinking about how much our lives have changed. And then I have to remind myself, very little has changed, because I was doing everything from this desk anyway. Remote working is not that unusual for me and a lot of my peers and a lot of our clients. I ordered everything off of Amazon anyway. I don't know the last time I went shopping, and I'm still able to click it and it's still turning up a couple of days later. So yes, the world's in a weird place and a lot of people are having to live their lives very differently. But there's also a huge number of people that had already embraced a lot of the technologies that now other people are having to use. We were already doing that. Now there's lots of other stuff that I miss, during this lockdown, and there's lots of other stuff that we're having to do very differently. But a lot of that basic stuff, without even noticing, we'd already moved to those platforms that allowed us to do more with less travel, with better communication, and with less disruption to our lives. Now, yes, I'm lucky that my office, is based, on site, and so I'm still able to come here and sit at the same desk and interact with the same people over the web. But really, the world had come an awful long way, and this is giving us a chance to appreciate some of those things that had already been developed.
Even just doing this, what we're doing now, 6 years ago, if that would have been a real struggle, or a lot harder, that I'm sure, and nowhere near as good quality. So yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so we've talked a bit about that side of technology and where we're at. Then what about with GBB then? What's your plans as we move forward at the moment? What are you looking to do?
Well, I guess our plans as we look into the next sort of 18 months, 2 years are really about consolidating around blended learning, to make sure that everything we do has an element of that blended learning to it. At the moment, we still have a lot of programs which do stand alone as a classroom-based course, that do rely heavily on face-to-face interaction. And again, I think this time is showing us that there are other ways to deliver that. So it might work, but actually there are other ways to make it work, and there are other benefits that come along with making sure that we get that blended approach into everything we do, not just the programs that we wrote with the blended technologies in mind, but actually going back to some of our other long-standing programs. It's easy to say if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but actually if you don't keep it moving forward, if you don't keep refreshing the programs, if you don't keep taking them to new audiences and really trying to find ways to interact with them in new ways, eventually even the best books become stagnated. So as much as we're always looking for new content and new theories and new approaches and new ways of looking at things, are we looking at new ways to deliver them? So I think the next 18 months to 2 years for us are definitely making sure that we spread the really good blended stuff that we've got out into all of our programs and offer that to our clients.
Cool. And then feeding into that question, what do you see as the biggest challenges then to be able to do those things moving forward? I mean, there's a very obvious one at the moment, but also generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, there is a challenge at the moment, but I don't think it's as big as people maybe are concerned about. The magnitude of what we're looking at with the COVID-19 lockdown from a business perspective, I think is what is, if I talk from a personal perspective, that's what is, blowing my mind when I try to look at it. It's so every business has stopped. Even the essential services that are running in completely different ways than they have previously. The way we're interacting with each other, the way we're working with each other is changing completely, and it's happened so fast. So we talk about agility in business as being absolutely critical, and we do a lot of work with businesses about how agile their teams are. Have they, even just in terms of the way they've structured the size of their teams, are they small enough to be agile when it really counts? Have you got enough supervisors, team leaders in place to allow that sort of agility even within a really large organization? Well, those things are suddenly really coming to the forefront. But actually, for me, the challenge of the COVID-19 lockdown, if you were a business that was operating, to a sensible cash flow model, we will still be counting this in weeks. even if it went on for more than a year, you would still be counting it in weeks realistically as a business. And so, back to some of those good basic business principles, and luckily we are in the position to say, well, we've practiced what we've preached, and we're in a strong position there. So actually, I'm looking out at some of the other challenges as being more pressing to make sure that we address in our product offering when we're able to go out and really offer the product again as the world starts to return to whatever normal will look like, and be agile enough to embrace the lasting changes that come from this period, whatever they'll be. But I suspect that this will go some way towards addressing the generational gap, which has been a challenge for many businesses. There are some really significant differences between the younger working age community out there. So, our Gen Zs that are coming into the workplace, and what they need, and how easy it is to connect with them, and how you motivate them, and how you deliver material to them, and how you train them. And the biggest challenge for a business like ours is, how do I take a program which has been written for Gen Z and that younger workforce, but then I have to sell it to a senior manager who is not necessarily as tuned into what those people need. So how do I hit that balance between something that a more experienced manager will buy based on what they believe to be great value, when the whole problem that they're trying to solve is that as a business they don't communicate that well with their younger workforce. But if we design something specifically for their younger workforce, well, we struggle to sell it to the more senior managers. That is a huge challenge for us. And it really requires building a great relationship with those buyers, and really making sure that they trust us to work with their teams in the right way. So I think that challenge will continue, but I hope that people moving on to this sort of video technology, people having to work from home, so staff having more autonomy, managers having to allow their staff to have more autonomy because they can't be there and watch over them all the time, might be doing something to close some of that gap anyway, and that might make that challenge a little easier. But I'm also aware that it might make it even harder, that those senior managers just cannot wait to get their staff back where they can see them and properly manage them and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that I think will continue to be a real challenge for us for the next few years.
So just picking up on that, I'm just curious. I'll put it on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
What would you say? A course designed for Gen Z does differently to a course perhaps for the older generation?
I think for me it's about making sure that you are building a clear picture out of some really manageable sized chunks of material. And that doesn't mean that younger people have got a lower attention span in any way. They're just used to consuming material only as much as they need at a time. And as soon as they've got that piece of information, they're comfortable with it, and they want to go away and use it. Now, of course, I'm talking about very broad brushes here. So for me, a program that will be successful with those younger people in the workforce tends to set a very clear goal and then achieve it really quite quickly. And so keep building up across a larger number of smaller goals that are achieved quite quickly, and people are able to go away and put into practice, and feel that even if they walked away a third of the way through the program, they would already have achieved a third of the program. I think that's the big difference in attitude that I see when I talk to people who are more established in the workplace. They're quite happy to go through, a multi-module program and not feel like they've completed it until they've completed all the modules. Yeah. Whereas our younger learners tend to engage a module at a time. And once they've got that piece, they're only going to come back and do module 2 if they feel that module 2 will be useful, and that will be based on how useful module 1 was. So actually being able to build things up over a longer period of time doesn't work as well, we find, for those people in the workplace. So I think that's one of the markers of a good program for that generation of learners.
Good effort.
Thanks.
Again, it makes perfect sense from when I bring that back to the marketing world. We always look at how can you say the same message but in fewer words.
Yeah.
And it's like you just said, the smallest amount of information possible, as quick as possible, rather. Short, snappy videos, YouTube. It kind of all makes sense if you think about how they consume the media as well. Cool. Okay, so we come towards like the last couple questions then. We've touched on COVID-19 a bit already and how that's sort of looking as challenges. How have you adapted already? Of course, remote working and that side of it, but and perhaps also it's a two-pronged question. What advice might you give even to yourself if you could go back a few weeks over what you've learned over the last few weeks? Yeah.
Well, I guess to some extent it's probably a bit early to go back and say, you know, what have we done well, what have we not done well. We believe as a business we're handling this situation as well as we can. So advice for other people in similar situations, I suppose, not being afraid to communicate even if you don't have all the answers yet. You know, my personal style is probably not to communicate until I'm sure of what I'm going to be saying, and that hasn't worked because we don't have a plan. We don't know when this will finish. We don't know what things will look like afterwards, and I think too many people are waiting to get the confirmed date of when everything goes back to normal to start really making a plan and communicating a plan to their customers and their staff and their teams. So we got over that quite quickly because I think I was quite guilty of that in the early part of this because it's my more natural style. And then realized that I wasn't going to get that clarity. And we still don't have that clarity, the same as any other business. But that's no excuse for not communicating with your customers and your teams. So we've tried to be really good at updating, and if tomorrow's update, you know, contradicts today's update, we're just quite open with that and say, actually, we changed our minds overnight, or we got a new piece of information, or there was a new government announcement, and so here's the new plan. And then there might be another new plan in a few days' time, but at least we know what we're going to be aiming towards today. So I think we've done that as well as we can. Maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but we have, you know, put some markers in the ground to say, well, we don't know everything that's going to happen, but we can be pretty sure about some key things that we believe will happen along the way, just from a common sense point of view. So actually, what can we do around those things? Even if we don't have exact timing for them, we know things will start to return. We know there will be a point where we can bring people back into the office. We know there will be a point where we can start going back into clients' offices. And even if we don't know when that is, we can start planning for what that might look like and realistically what changes there may need to be. So we're trying to do that, and then we're also trying to embrace the slightly slower pace to say, well, what can we do, and are there outstanding projects and some of those plans we talked about around, you know, increasing the amount of blended learning and rolling it back through some of our back catalogue of programs. Well, is this the opportunity to do that and accelerate some of those plans that we already had? I think, you know, again, you know, back to the point about running a good, you know, business in terms of cash flow means that you have still got money to invest in difficult times, so that you are investing in the solution rather than waiting for it to come from somewhere and seeing what damage has been done in the meantime. So we're trying to do that and embrace some of those technologies and spread them wider through the business. You know, our remote working, you know, we invested more in the platforms that we were already using, you know, upgraded some of those systems early on in this so that we had the very best way of communicating with our teams out and about. So I think that's about as much as we can do at the moment. But I think really my attention is turning to when people start to come back into the workplace and what that's going to be like. And I think that's what people quite understandably are not really focused on yet in the business world. They're focused on what's happening right now.
That was going to be my next question is, you know, as you and I sit here now, we don't really know when that day will come that we do start opening businesses back up again. People do start coming back to the office. But yeah, the question was, as you were sort of heading there, you know, what do we think that'll look like and what will be the right way to do it?
Yeah. I think it will be very different in different businesses, and I think that's one of the things that again we will have to all start to think about and get our heads around. What's going to be the impact in this industry? What's going to be the impact in this industry? We will come back online, I think, as a nation. In a much longer period of time than we all went offline. So we will need to deal with different clients in different ways. They'll have different needs. But I think particularly in terms of as they bring staff back into work, there will be a temptation for a lot of businesses, I'm sure, to say, well, the government have put financial packages in place and we should make the most of them. And as a business, we have looked at those and seen which ones we think are relevant to us, which ones we should take advantage of, which ones are less relevant to us, like most businesses. But if the temptation is to keep people out of the business for as long as possible to get the maximum benefit from those financial packages, I think the temptation will be to wait until the business is back and you've got income flowing again and you've got customers coming through your doors again, and to bring staff off furlough gradually as you need them, to maximize that package. And from a business perspective, that makes perfect sense. But from an individual's perspective, being furloughed is alien to the vast majority of the workforce. What have they been doing with their time? What has happened to their value system? What has happened to their behavior, to their beliefs? If as a business you wait until you need that person back because the team that you've got in place is now too stretched, you've got too many customers, too many orders, the phones are ringing and you can't answer them all, right, well, let's get another half a team back in the office. You're going to need them to hit the ground running that first day they come back from furlough leave. But I don't think that there will be many people who are in the right frame of mind to just hit the ground back running, back in their previous role 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks since they were last on that desk. You absolutely must not underestimate as a business. It may sound, alarmist to talk about PTSD and post-traumatic, stress, but actually people will have been through some very difficult and dark times, just looking at what's going on in the world, some of the worry that they will have had, about their finances, about their health, about their loved ones. You will be, no matter how good a manager you are, out of touch with what's been going on in their personal lives, the struggles that families have had, suddenly all being crammed together, some of the tensions that will have arisen, some of the grief that people will have gone through, losing people that they know or worrying about it, even if it's, only through extended networks that they're starting to have people affected by these health issues. They will be carrying all of that back into the workplace and they will need time and support to adjust to that. And if we bring them in as the phones are in meltdown and the orders are crashing through and we've got huge stresses in our own business to get it back up and running, that is not going to be the team that you need to get your business back in place. So I'm really already starting to think, what is the right time to re-engage with our teams, with our clients for all the same reasons? How can we, effectively make contact with them and give them the support and the space so that we can all work out how we get back up to speed? But it's not going to be, turning the switch off as we did as a nation. We can't turn it back on over a weekend in the same way. I think there are some businesses that are going to really suffer with that when they start to bring people back, if they don't have some structure and some support in place for people coming back into the workplace.
Cool. And that was it really for my list of questions for today. So unless you have anything else that you want to talk about while we're both here together.
It's been fun. Thanks very much. It's been good to chat through some of these things and think about what we're doing going forward and all the exciting things that there are to come. And right now having a little bit of breathing space to think through those and put plans in place and communicate them really effectively and have time to sit and talk them through as well. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much for doing it. And again, people watching through, I hope there might be some insights they can pick out of our discussion there as well. So cool. Well, thank you very much to everyone who watched that, and we'll do our best to get Tim back on again sometime soon.
Thanks very much. Cheers.